Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's, there's Councilmember Brewer, this month's agenda review. And we will have this session conducted by the one and only yours truly, Chief of Staff, Robert J. Scanlon. Take it away.
Right.
The pride of Olean.
Pride of Olean. Yep.
Right.
Class of 2003. So let's see here. We're going to start in the Finance Committee. We have introductory number 373, which is an agreement for Employee Network Incorporated for the Employee Assistance Program. Are there any comments or questions on introductory number 373?
I do have a question. I'd like to know why, or if there's a particular reason as to why it's being renewed right now, and what and how it compares to previous costs.
Okay.
I have a question. Do we know how many people you regularly use EAP?
Yeah, that is in, I think that part is in
It says 271. But what would really be interesting, would they give us the previous years?
How many years back?
Well, they've been doing this for 5, apparently.
Okay.
And I really want to see it for 2000, what are we in, 20, at the earliest opportunity.
So how about, can we have the usage rates of EAP over the last 5 years and usage year to date?
Except I was trying to just see if there was, how much truth there was to this increased level of emotional distress, right?
Okay.
So year to date, if I don't have a comparison for year to date for previous years, we still wouldn't know, right?
Okay, so let's rephrase that question to be more accurate, and maybe it will read well, we are a full 10 months in.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does this year's rate of EAP year to date compare with the previous 5 years of the contract?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on 373?
Just one, BJ, last one. It was sent to it was sent to a bunch of different vendors, and the 2 local ones did not bid. And just wondering if they have, administration has any idea as to why that might be.
Okay. Moving on to introductory number 374. It is an agreement with Energetics Corporation for drug and alcohol testing services. Any questions on 374?
Yeah, I have one. With THC not being included for all employees, has the cost been reduced for this service year over year?
Any other questions?
Miguel, I'm not sure they would know that yet because it just started, what was it, a month ago or 2 months ago, they started not testing for THC. So they wouldn't have year over year yet, I don't believe. They could project possibly.
Yeah, they also may have talked about it with the company to see if there will be something. So you can just put that.
I guess the question is there a cost savings due to the change that we anticipate?
Also, how many people a year do we test to equal that? What is that, 64,220? How many tests does that equal to per year?
Are you asking if it's a flat fee for each year, or is it per person as well, or you just want to know?
It's probably per test. So, how many people for alcohol, how many people for THC while we're still doing it? Does that include? Like, how did we come up with that number?
Okay. Any other questions on 374? Moving on to 375, an agreement with governmentjobs.com Incorporated for recruitment and application tracking software and services. Any questions on 375?
Yes. How many people do we plan to recruit this year? Don't we have a furlough going on or a freeze for hiring? Or are we still hiring? Because if we're only going to be hiring, if we're only hiring 2-3 people this year and spending over $100,000, that's a little much to me.
Certainly. We can ask that question. Any other questions on 375?
Yeah, just like generally what the strategy is to try to get new people into public sector jobs. I mean, I don't think that governmentjobs.com is where people who are not looking for government jobs are going to go. So I'm curious if there's just a general strategy for that.
Any other questions on this item? Moving on to introductory number 376, which is an agreement with UKG Incorporated for enterprise process and system solution for scheduling, time, and attendance upgrade. Any questions on this item? All right, move on to introductory number 377, which is the cancellation of or refund of erroneous taxes and charges. Any questions on 377?
I think I do, BJ.
On 377?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how to frame it yet. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time thinking about it right now, and I'll email you afterwards.
Okay.
I really want to know what kind of collections they're still trying to do with these properties, but I want to think of the right way to word it.
Okay. I'll just make a note to reach back out.
We go back. This is not specifically related to the last two, but more generally, we've done a lot of things with regard to personnel management. It is updating it and the systems. The one that we just looked at, the recruitment thing where they are able to pay the civil service fees online and the attendance and scheduling, tracking, all of that. Overall, with these changes that have been implemented, are we able to see both increases in efficiency and reductions in cost?
Would you like me to list that for the Kronos item, 376?
It sort of goes with the other one too, like the whole recruitment thing and all of that,
Yeah.
because people had to pay their, for civil service tests, they'd have to come in and pay their fees and all that good stuff. So it kind of goes with that as well.
BJ, I'm ready to ask my question on 377 when you're done.
May I read yours back, President Scott, to make sure I'm capturing it correctly? With the upgrades we've done around HR processes. Have we seen an increase in efficiencies and a decrease in costs? Can you provide a qualitative summary?
Perfect.
Okay. And go ahead, Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you. The first part of the question is the administration still trying to collect from the delinquent taxpayers on these properties? And secondly, I'd like to understand if there is a process by which tenants in these properties are notified of the change in ownership and what role the city has in that communication.
Okay, I have those both. Any other questions on any of the items that we've discussed in finance thus far? If not, we'll move on to introductory number 378, which is an agreement with Redco, Rochester Financial Empowerment Center Initiative, and a budget amendment. Are there any questions on introductory number 378?
Just one from me, BJ. Under item 1, the authorization of the $50,000, it's just not clear to me where that money's coming from, if that could be clarified.
That money is coming from the office of the mayor, so the mayor's budget. So, yep. So in section 3 of the legislation, not the transmittal, it tells you where that money is coming.
Okay,
And it came to the mayor via JP Morgan Chase, mayor's office, via a grant from JP Morgan.
Any other questions on 378?
Yeah, just a general update on the Financial Empowerment Center in terms of the way COVID has impacted. We all probably recall their launch date, their big ribbon cutting was supposed to happen, I think, the exact day that we got our first case in Monroe County. So I just wonder how COVID's impacted their ability to do their jobs.
Any other on 378? If not, we'll move on to introductory number 379, which is an agreement with
Question.
Urban League.
BJ,
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
So-
Councilmember.
The money's gonna go back to the office of the mayor. What's the mentality behind that versus putting it into NBD, into their budget? Did it originally come from the office of the mayor to Redco? That's why it's going back?
Yeah, because Office of Community Wealth Building is in the mayor's office.
Gotcha,
think-
okay, thank you. Strike that question from the record, BJ.
The next item I have is, let's see here. We have 379, which is an agreement with the Urban League of Rochester, New York Incorporated and a Bureau American Action League Incorporated for small businesses and entrepreneurship support. I would note, Councilmember Melendez, as an employee of Bureau American Action League, that you should not participate in the discussion around this item. Any questions or comments on this item?
What services? I mean, that's
Good question.
Any other questions? We're going to move on to introductory number 394, which is a charter amendment for the Office of the Inspector General legislation. It should be noted that this item was introduced this month, but the intent is to hold it for the month, and we will have a work session on it on November 12th. However, if anyone does have any questions, it would be good to be able to provide them to the administration so that they could make sure that they're answered in that work session.
I do have a
No,
question. It's not really pertaining to this specifically, but when do we decide to sell it for $1 and have it as green space versus requiring
Oh,
the
Councilmember, I apologize. We have not moved to NBD yet. This is a tweener item that
sorry.
came from finance, and it is related to the Office of the Inspector General.
my bad.
Councilmember Evans, I believe you were starting a question as well.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I know that this was presented before, but last time it was presented, you've had 7 council members change since then. So something like this, I think, I know there's a work session, but something like this, I think, requires a lot more discussion than just 1 or 2 meetings, because this is a chart. This is amending the city charter. So I just want to note that for the record. So I'm just wondering what their hope is around, getting this changed. So clarification on that would be important. I mean, I look forward to the work session, but I mean, changing the charter for something like this, I think, is not just something that's done in 2 meetings, particularly when you have 7 different council members. The other thing I'll say is there needs to be I think that there definitely need to be a larger conversation like this, because as the council president has sent out before regarding another department that is supposed to work closely with the administration as well as the council. We've had some challenges there, and we have our independent legal counsel advising us now because of issues that arise in that area. So I think we need to get some clarification on some things on how something like this would work, and particularly how it would represent council as well, in a manner that wouldn't create friction like we saw with the current situation with the department that I'm talking about. So
Councilmember Evans, that's why I agreed that we would accept it and hold it to give the opportunity for consideration and discussion of those kinds of items, issues. I'm not sure what date the work session is scheduled for, but that doesn't preclude us from beginning to do our own research and developing whatever kinds of concerns there may be, because I think we may have mentioned that when it was submitted before, we had the 7 council members who are not there. I think maybe, I guess, am I the only one who's here that was there then?
You and Mike.
I think Councilmember Patterson, yeah.
Yeah,
you and Mike.
we had some serious concerns about this legislation. Now, I don't know what the lay of the land is, and I won't know until we look at it again. But all of you now have the opportunity to begin that kind of review. And it wasn't just from the work session, it was from doing some direct kind of research and looking around at what other cities are doing and what some other kinds of intrinsic concerns are embodied in that model.
Yeah. No, thank you, President. Yeah, I think President Scott, you and Mike would be very helpful to us that, weren't here before when this was presented last time. So
I would also note, Councilmember Evans, that Katie in our office was able to go through the file that we had from 2016 on this topic and scan in a couple of documents that provided additional information, and those have all been sent out. And I believe the clerk's office has reached out to records management to try to get a copy of the legislation as well as all of the questions and answers that came from 2016. I know that they don't have the 2016 files in office, so they had to reach out for that. And Hazel can give an update as to where we are with that.
That is correct. We did reach out to them to retrieve the box.
thank you.
Yep.
So pick it up.
What
once
has
we
to
have that,
happen, Hazel?
The staff has to go over and pick it up.
So once we have that, we'll make sure we get that scanned in and sent to everyone as well, so that they can see the historical questions and responses that were asked on the previous legislation and be able to compare it to the legislation that's being presented now.
I just want to clarify. So I hear everything you said, President Scott, and it all makes sense. But in terms of right now, do you still recommend, BJ, to try to rattle off questions prior to the work session, or is it fair to say that it's going to be a multifaceted conversation? We wait to the work session and then make sure there's ample follow-up from there.
I would defer to the council. If there are questions that you want to ask, this is an opportunity to do so, but there will be additional opportunities. I would ask that if there are questions for this, that Josanne make sure that they get sent to the administration so that they would be able to make sure that the answers to them would be included in the work session.
I think my preference is to not ask questions now that seem like they're kind of one-off questions when it really is about having more of a kind of dialogue about it and doing our own research. So I'll pass, but if you and President Scott, if you all determine that having questions beforehand, before the work session is helpful, I'll gladly submit some once I'm ready to do so.
It's not an either or, because I think that we probably will have an opportunity to gather some questions before what date did we put a date for?
November 12th.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have the opportunity, but that would make the work session more productive if we already know, based on some of the stuff we've looked at, if we already know the kinds of concerns we have. Doesn't say we won't have additional substantive questions at the work session, but as much of that as we can get in hand ahead of time, that would be fine.
Do you anticipate us talking about this during the chairs meeting?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Briefly.
Okay.
And Joe did pick up the box from records management. So we'll go through it and get you the information that you need.
Great. Would anyone like to add any questions for introductory number 394? If not, we'll move into NBD. All right, Councilmember Pio, I believe you were starting with the question on introductory number 380, the sale of real estate.
Yeah, so I was wondering, when do we sell it for $1 and keep it as green space versus require a build out on the land? Meaning, is it a space requirement or a location requirement? I don't know.
So we can probably look at the city policy that's referenced in that regard, right? So if we could pull that up and forward it.
Yeah. I also think that unbuildable lots, if you look at the back part of the legislation, there's a checklist on items that would make it buildable or unbuildable. And I think that unbuildable vacant lots tend to be sold for $1 if they're going to adjacent owners, but we can certainly ask and have them provide a response.
Hey,
Any other questions on 380?
Just want to understand something. I want to understand about Rock City Rentals, which is the one LLC buying a lot that is not based in Rochester. It's a Delaware-based LLC. I just want to understand what their plan is for the property and if their other properties are free of code violations.
Is that 5 Lamont Place? Or is that 21 Mineola?
119 Otis Street is the one that Rock City Reynolds is buying.
Oh, okay, 119 Otis. Sorry, what is the plan for 119?
I have one more question, BJ, when you're ready.
1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so specific to the Kirkland Road property, looks like that lot is being reduced in size and sold off. It looks like it's 3 separate lots. So I'm wondering what goes into the process for allowing a potentially buildable lot to be reduced in size and then sold to a private owner?
Okay, any other questions on 380? Hearing none, we'll move on to 381. Councilmember Patterson asked, how long will it take to implement this? And will the council have to vote on anything else related to this item? And this, of course, is the agreement with Launch IT Corporation for land management, software acquisition, and implementation. Are there any other questions on introductory number 381? Hearing none, I'll move on to introductory number 382, which is a technical amendment for ordinance number 2020-293, the L2P West Side Affordable Housing Project. Are there any questions on introductory number 382? Okay, we're going to move on. The next one is also a tweener. It is introductory number 395, and it is the CDS Clifford and Joseph Apartments project. Any questions on introductory number 395? That concludes Neighborhood and Business Development, and we're going to move on to the Parks and Public Works Committee. We start with introductory number 383, an agreement with CHA Consulting Incorporated and CSX Transportation Incorporated for engineering, design, and construction administration services, River Street Realignment Project. Any questions on 383? Go ahead, Councilmember.
Is there a way we could just set up as a one payment for various times we go into them? Because this is at least the third one that I've seen that we're paying CSX $30,000 to $50,000. So is there a way we could just negotiate one payment for the whole year? Or I have a bad taste in my mouth for CSX. That's all. So is there a way to make it so it's one negotiated payment of $75,000 for the year, so we don't have to keep going back to them and paying them $30,000 to $50,000 every time?
Just for the record, I think everyone has a bad taste in their mouth about CSX. I think no one more than the DES staff. But and you should ask the question, but I think the answer is that each piece that we get there, they negotiate based on that particular. We're buying CSX property, right? So this was the most expensive one I've seen in my time as committee chair, and I think it's because of where it's located and the size of it, and that ultimately is why the price is driven up. So I'm not sure a set price would the CSX holds all the cards, you know.
Any other questions on 383? We'll move on to 384, which is the State Street Reconstruction Project, Basin Street to Inner Loop.
I'd like to just ask on the record for at least a forecast for public meetings on this project. If not specific dates, then at least how many and roughly when.
Any other questions on 384? We'll move on to introductory number 385, a grant agreement for the Inner Loop North Transformation Project Scoping Study. Any questions on 385? All right, 386 and 387, the McGuire Building Renovation Project. Councilmember Gruber, did you want to make some comments on this item?
Do I?
I believe did you send me something that you said you wanted to talk about it here?
Nice. Good memory, BJ. Yeah, the last paragraph in the transmittal is about a cooperative purchasing network set up with the town of Greece. I don't know, maybe President Scott had familiarity with this, but I had not seen us do this before in my tenure. And we're essentially buying services based off of a contract that the town of Greece already has with this company, which I guess is something that we are allowed to do, not just with anyone in Monroe County, but with any municipality across New York State. So I thought it was curious, but it's something that the city does all the time. And they provided a list of items that they've done with this Gordian group in particular, and that the Gordian group has done in the larger community. So if people want to see that, BJ and Katie have that list and could share it with the whole group. But you could also say, no, you don't want your inbox clogged with that.
Yeah, if anyone wants it, just reach out to us and we'll make sure we send it to you. Are there any questions on
Katie, was that a fair representation of what you heard in the meeting too?
Yeah, I also hadn't heard of it, but I have only been around for a quick minute, so.
It's certainly a good thing to be able to access those lower cost contracts. So and we treat them sort of like blankets. I think we even do it with the school district. So it gives the municipalities or these units the option of having access to lower priced items without going through that entire bidding process again.
Are there any questions on introductory number 386 or 387? Okay, we're going to move on to public safety, youth, and recreation. President Scott, do you have intention to update the name of this committee? So
Public Safety, Recreation, and Human Services.
Okay, so we will
Hazel has it.
get to work on that. Okay, so that will, if not next month, will be reflected in the following month. I know that the clerk's office has to order some stamps and items to be able to prepare it accurately. So once we have the hardware, we will make sure that the change takes place and update it on the website and such as well.
Okay, so we don't need to modify the legislation for this month. The mayor's local law public hearing for the local law is on Monday.
I don't think we would need to modify the committee because the committee names are the prerogative of the council president. Okay. And upon her selection to update them, we can do so. And as long as she would be okay with doing it once we have all of the appropriate items in place and making that the effective date, then I think that would be appropriate. And we could work with Josanne to make sure that we would do that at the beginning of a legislative cycle.
The cycle, yeah.
Okay.
So for now, our soon to be forgotten Public Safety, Youth and Recreation Committee, do we have any questions on introductory number 388, the Animal Services Agreement for Verona Street Animal Society License and Operating Agreement?
Yeah, I'd like to know why this is being done now. I assume, I guess it's the pretext is I assume this is the first time this is being done. And I'd like to know what's prompting it.
Certainly. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to introductory number 389, the receipt and use of funds from the sale of a mounted horse named Shamrock.
What's the status of the other horses?
Can you clarify what that question entails? Are you asking, like, are they close to retirement or?
Do we still, what number of horses do we have currently? And is that number consistent with the number that we had agreed to a few years ago when there was so much uproar about the horses? And are their duties the same? Because you don't see them as often. They had before been used extensively with like crowd control and things like that, and community policing kind of stuff. I can't even remember the last time I saw a horse on the street.
Okay. Any other questions on the receipt and use of funds from the sale of a mounted horse.
Where is Shamrock's new home?
Any other questions? Introductory number 390, agreement with Monroe County Stop DWI grant. Any questions on introductory number 390?
Yes. I'd like to know how many DWI stops they've had this year. Please.
To clarify, do you mean how many people were pulled over and charged with the DWI, or how many like setups have they done?
Right. Roadblocks, setups.
In that vein, I'd like to know where these details typically occur, or where, I guess, where have they occurred in the past, what neighborhoods, and could they provide an analysis of the impact in those neighborhoods?
So is there a way to find out what the revenue impact is or has been based on the DWI stops? I was looking at something, you know, as we do our racial equity stuff, there was a video or something that talked about how fines are a significant part of the budgets of the police departments for a number of cities. And that was one of the major issues in Ferguson. They basically had quotas, and I guess the fines and things were something like a third of their budget, or it was really an oppressive, even regressive kind of thing. And I've not heard, we never talk about, or I don't think we do, the resources or the income that we generate from those. I'd like to know if that is recorded in any way, and if so, how is it treated as a part of the city or the RPD budget?
Okay, I want to make sure I have that one right.
Okay.
Is there a way to find out what the revenue impact has been based on DWI stops? In some cities, fines are a significant part of their police department budget. Are these fines recorded in any way? And if so, how are they treated within the city budget and the RPD budget?
Yeah, okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, I just don't want to get sort of pushed aside by somebody saying it's not a significant part of the budget. I mean, because I still want to know.
Maybe we can discuss
Yeah, we
maybe
can
a
figure it
refining
out.
piece. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on introductory number 390?
Just how much of it's overtime?
I think that, oh, you mean of the funding, how much is overtime? Okay, got it. Any other questions on 390? Going to move on to introductory number 391, a license agreement with Action for a Better Community Incorporated. Councilmember Gruber is a member of the ABC board. I have not yet heard if you have to recuse yourself on this, so if you wouldn't mind refraining from conversation or discussion on this item. Anyone else? Any questions on introductory number 391? Hearing none, we'll move on to introductory number 392, a grant agreement with the New York State Office of Children and Family Services for AmeriCorps. Any questions on 392? I'd like to give a little shout out to the AmeriCorps program as it brought Katie Hasselwander to the city of Rochester and to our office. And it also brought me to the city of Rochester proper, but not the city as a work employer. But I did meet Elaine Spall doing it, and that's how I got connected. So the Rochester AmeriCorps program has been great to our office.
Ooh,
Great program.
yeah.
So we'll move on to introductory number 393, a grant agreement for the Hartford Financial Services Group Incorporated for fire prevention and safety. This is the final item, unless we would like to take any questions to also, because last month we held Wilmer Hale, so I think we will be willing to take some questions there if there are any. But we'll start with 393, a grant agreement for the Hartford Financial Services Group. Any questions on 393?
Remind me why we have to do legislation for this? I mean, it's only $5,000. Why do we have to do legislation?
Josanne, do you have an answer to that directly? This might be because it's the receipt and use of a grant rather than the spending of money. So for professional services under 10,000, we don't have to, but we might have to do it for all grant receivings. That would be my
That's
guess.
correct, BJ. We can ask
Any
him
other-
clarification, but yeah.
Any other questions on 393? Okay, hearing none. Last month, we did vote to put an agreement with Wilmer Hale to review critical RPD policies, procedures, and trainings. It was recommended that that item, introductory number 372, be submitted to the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee to be given additional consideration. As such, this would be the first time that folks would be given the opportunity to ask questions during an agenda review. So if anyone has any questions on introductory number 372, please feel free to ask them now.
Has the scope changed at all since it got put back into committee, or are we still working with the same scope from last month? That was a question for you, BJ. Is it the same? Has anything on the document changed from when we put it into committee?
No.
Okay.
There has been progress in that there is a internal group that has representation from the council, the Police Accountability Board, the Race Commission, UCLM, the Mayor's Office, and RPD, who have met and are discussing. So I think that there is some movement in that regard, and there could potentially be some discussion around what the scope will be, but we have not received any amendments to this item, if that answers the question.
It does. Thank you.
Are there any questions related to introductory number 372? Hearing none, I would toss it back to President Scott as that concludes the legislation that we have to review. And if you'd like to adjourn the meeting or.
Okay. All right. So if there are no additional questions, if there are no additional questions, I look forward to seeing you all on Monday at our chairs meeting. So with that, we can adjourn.
All right.